We are just over 1 week away from the first UFC pay-per-view of 2025, headlined by pound for pound #1 Islam Makhachev against the #1 contender Arman Tsarukyan. This is a rematch though from 2019 where Islam got the decision win over Tsarukyan, but Arman is on a 4-fight winning streak with notable wins over Oliveira and Dariush and is looking the best that he ever has inside of the UFC, and he's currently has 14 finishes, but it will be nearly impossible to finish Islam Makhachev.
But Islam, he's on a 14-fight win streak with 4 championship wins and notable wins over Poirier, Volk 2 times, Oliveira, Hooker, and Tsarukyan back in the day.
Exactly.
So it's not going to be easy for Arman to get the upper hand here.
And on paper, this fight shouldn't be close, but we all know by now, MMA math just doesn't work.
Yeah, Tsarukyan is one of the most well-rounded up-and-comers. Can you even call him an up-and-comer? Because he's been here.
He's been around, but like...
Now he's the #1 contender.
Yeah.
So he's one of the best #1 contenders in any division right now.
Yeah.
He is so skilled, well-rounded. He's also been improving from their first fight. I think it was universally accepted that Arman gave Islam his toughest test early in his career. And that was Arman's debut in the UFC. Mm-hmm. Think about how much nerves and how much excitement you have in your debut, and to go out there and get the first takedown on Islam Makhachev in his UFC career. That's incredible. Like, that should not be overlooked. And so how much he's improved. He's had great wars with Gamrot on the ground. He's had great wars on the feet. He's KO'd Dariush.
Exactly.
He's survived with Oliveira for 3 rounds. This dude has pretty much done everything you can.
Yeah.
But Islam Makhachev, we talked about his last couple wins. Those are unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a potentially top 6-7 fighter of all time. Let's break this thing down.
Let's do it.
All right. Is there any area in this fight where Arman has the advantage?
It's tough.
Age?
It's almost like,
Speed?
age.
Like, I don't even know if he's faster than Islam. I don't think he has better cardio.
No. Cardio is an interesting one. Islam just fights at a very steady pace. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like he starts fast. It doesn't seem like he ends slow. He did get caught in the 5th round against Volk in their first fight. So maybe there is something there where he does get a little bit sloppy with his striking. I can see that. But it's not like Arman's some world-class boxer.
Yeah, like he's powerful, but he's nowhere near like a guy like Poirier, who Islam just fought.
Yeah, call me crazy, but I do think one of Arman's biggest advantages, and we talked about this in a previous video if you watched Dodson's Corner, it's his belief in himself.
The mentality.
Exactly. He believes that he can beat Islam. He believes that in his first fight, he didn't perform as well as he could, and he knows that he's improved. And so he has the confidence of thinking, oh, I did this good against Islam in my first fight when I didn't know anything. Now all the experience I've gained, I'm going to kill this guy.
Well, yeah, and I think to beat a guy like Islam Makhachev, it takes that heart. It takes that, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be the best fighter in the world.
Yeah, I mean, look at how well Dustin did. Look at how well Volk did in their first fight. Both those guys, Dustin, on the one hand, that was his last chance. He gave everything he had, and it showed. He went to sleep.
Yeah.
You're right, he didn't tap. And then the Volk fight, he has the most heart maybe of any fighter.
Speaking of Arman, if Arman wants to win, what does he have to do to win?
There is no clear path to win against someone who's well-rounded as Islam. He's been talking about something that he's created, some sort of move that Islam has never seen or that anyone has never seen, and it's going to really turn the tide of this fight. I don't necessarily buy into those fighter meeting talks. You know, they can say whatever they want until they get into the octagon and I actually see something. Like, who knows? Maybe it's something like Max Holloway's spinning back kick. You know, maybe it's a very niche move like that doesn't get utilized. But I'm sure whatever training plan Khabib has put together for Islam, they're thinking of every possibility. They study tape like crazy.
Yeah.
And so does Arman.
Well, and I think speaking of tape, for each of these fighters, which fights for their opponents should they look at the most when they're looking at tape? So let's start off with, like, what fight is Islam watching the most in terms of the Arman Tsarukyan approach?
Well, I think for Arman, you do get a lot of information from the Oliveira fight.
And then probably the Gamrot fight. I would say that those are the top 2 fights that you got to look at.
Yeah, because the Oliveira fight, he did almost get finished
2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
and
2 or 3
like
times.
A razor close decision.
Exactly. So you get to see where he's susceptible in terms of takedowns and submissions. And even on the feet, he threw an axe kick. You get to see what he has in his arsenal, which is really interesting. And in the Gamrot fight, you get to see how he works in the scrambles, how strong he is against Gamrot. So yeah, I think it should be, they both have a lot of tape to study. On the other side, Arman, he has so much tape, 5 rounds.
Yeah, and I think you have to honestly watch every single fight because, like, in terms of style, he's probably closer to Charles, but then also I feel like you'd get a lot from the first Volk fight. I think that's what the fight you have to watch to find the plan to victory. You know, Volk almost had the plan to victory in that fight, so that's the fight you watch. But I think you also have to watch his most recent fight against Dustin Poirier. See if there's any holes that he was showing against Poirier that you might be able to expose in 2025.
Yeah, Poirier, I think he'll get more out of watching the Volk fight because what Poirier was doing, he was surviving and then on against the cage. And then when they were out in open space, he was landing some stuff, but really he didn't have any success anywhere, right? You're going to want to watch Volk, where Volk literally just outgritted Islam Makhachev in some of those rounds. He literally just put his head down and grinded. Like, as dumb as that sounds, it truly is what Volk did to get close to the win. And then when they were both tired in the 5th round, Volk landed that big overhand. I believe it was an overhand, and then took him down. In my opinion, if he would have stood him back up again, maybe we see a different outcome, right? You never know. But Arman is going to take a lot of solace in the fact that both Volk and Poirier have taken Islam to deep waters. And he probably thinks, I'm better than both those guys. I'm bigger than Volk. I'm powerful. I'm more powerful than Volk. And I'm younger than Poirier.
Yeah. And he's like, you know what, this guy's beat Charles, I beat Charles.
Not in the same fashion,
but like they still both have that confidence. Like I think that Arman is coming in. He's got to believe that he is the person that's going to beat Islam.
And he does. I think
he's going to beat that. He's going to end that 14 fight winning streak.
Yeah, I think he does believe that.
All right. So where does each fighter want this fight to take place?
I think both of them are comfortable if it goes to the ground.
Yeah.
I think they're both very comfortable on the ground. I would say Islam is more comfortable on the feet. He's going to be comfortable boxing in the first round. If it does go to the ground in the first round, Islam's also happy, but I do think he's going to want to feel out the striking.
Oh, I think too with Islam being on the ground, I think if you're Islam, you're like, there's no shot this guy submits me. But you're like, Charles almost tapped this guy out a couple times in a 3-round fight. I think I could tap him out.
Exactly.
So, like, for Islam, that's where he has the advantage. It's like he's probably more comfortable on the feet and ground, you know? But that's also what happens when you have this long, dominant champion. You know what? Like, they have that confidence. They have that expertise. They have the experience that puts them ahead in these championship fights. And that's why it's so hard to be the challenger up against a dominant champion. But when they do it, it's magical.
And I think a lot of people are going into this fight thinking Arman has no chance and Islam is the number 1 pound for pound fighter. No challenger could possibly beat him. Maybe that's true right now, but let's go back in time. If we look at Usman, no one thought Leon Edwards was going to be the guy to beat him, especially because that was a rematch and Leon Edwards wasn't beating him. And then a freak head kick KO happened. Something like that in MMA, it doesn't happen often, but it sure does happen eventually. And then we go back even further. Look at Anderson Silva when he got KO'd by a total fluke. Let's call it how it is. Like these things do happen in MMA. Who knows if Arman is the next person to defeat the number 1 guy? Yeah,
and there's just more and more examples of that stuff happening. You know what? Like, it is MMA. If the favorite won every single fight, no one would watch.
And I'd make a lot of money betting.
Exactly. So are there any holes in Islam's game that Arman can try to exploit?
Well, there's not any major holes. Like, he doesn't have the major holes like Pereira has in terms of grappling or like Poirier has in terms of wrestling. Like, there's no major goal that Arman looks at and he thinks that's my key to victory. I think he needs to have a Volk mentality where he's like, I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to put it all on the line. I'm going to wrestle him. I'm going to strike with him. I'm going to believe that I can beat him everywhere. And maybe I can. I do think Islam is more susceptible on the feet. Like, he likes to test himself, I think. And so he gets hit quite a bit on the feet. But Arman isn't a great striker. Like, he's not an elite striker like a Poirier or even like a Topuria, right? If we're talking about a Topuria matchup in the future with Islam, I think there's a large possibility that Makhachev gets hit with big shots on the feet. With Arman, I'm not really worried about that.
And here's the thing is we saw Makhachev, he let shots go through, but we saw Poirier landing shots and he never really stumbled, wobbled. he definitely didn't knock him down. So it's like for a guy like Arman, it's like you can throw those shots, but like you're just gonna need like the perfect shot to land if you want to knock this guy down. And if you knock down Islam, I mean, in a 5-round fight, that's basically a round you won, and then you just need 2 more where you can dominate on the ground. Before we get into our predictions for this fight, what is each fighter's one X factor or key to victory in this fight?
They're both so similar. Like, it does genuinely feel like Islam is just a little bit better, maybe 3% better at everything. So it's tough to say one fighter has an X factor. Like with Islam, it's usually his wrestling, right? But with Arman, it's usually his wrestling. So I'd say both their X factors kind of line up. With Arman, his X factor for this fight, maybe it is what he's talking about, where he's developed some new style.
Yeah, I think that is what it takes. You know, you have to take risks in this fight. You have to be okay with, I'm okay if I end up in a guillotine in the 5th round, knowing that I gave it everything I had to try to get this win. I think that new whatever he's working on is Arman's X factor, and I think Islam's X factor, his key, it's Khabib's like mid-round adjustments. You know, like in between the rounds, those adjustments are what's like, okay, like he's like just like the way he sees the ring. It's just it's unreal. Lucas, the moment we've all been waiting for. How do you see this fight playing out? What is your prediction?
Well, my prediction, I think. I do always like to go with the underdog, but for this one, it doesn't really make any sense other than picking Islam. I think we've talked about this entire video. I'm just leaning 60-40 in terms of Islam. I do think it's going to be competitive. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means, because I don't think, like, if you go back and look at all of Arman's fights, he's never really had anyone dominate him. Like, even in their first fight, I wouldn't say Islam dominated him. It was always competitive. Arman sometimes had the better of him, but then you go look at all of his other wins, like all of them are competitive.
Yeah.
You know, Arman always has competitive fights, and that's why he's exciting, because it goes back and forth. So I wouldn't say that it's going to be a 50-45 for Islam, like I've seen lots of people saying. I think it would mainly be on a perfect night, the best Islam gets is a 49-46.
Yeah.
On an average night, I would probably say it's a 48-47 on most judges' scorecards. Again, maybe even a submission, because we have seen Arman he gets pretty excited and then he gets caught in something.
Yeah, I could see it playing out very similar to Poirier, where like Arman just gives everything he has, boom, 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 and he just in the 5th round, it's just like it's too much for him. You know, and I think it's obviously gonna be harder to submit Arman than Poirier, but we're just talking like hypothetically in terms of like giving it your all.
Yeah,
I think for my prediction, I'm kind of tossing and turning between a 49-46 and a 48-47 decision win for Islam. I think I'm going to go 48-47 just because I think, like, if Islam's up 3-1 heading into that last round, like, he's not going out there and trying to just absolutely dominate. He's just trying to make through. You know, he's that champion. He's smart enough to know what to do in those situations.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would not be surprised if Islam finds a submission.
No.
That is not out of the question, especially in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
After that, they get sweaty and it's kind of tough. But
all right, that is going to wrap it up for us today. Make sure you guys go down to the comments. Let us know who you're predicting in this fight. Any additional thoughts, what you guys think about the first main event of 2025. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
See ya.